In what is proving to be a security nightmare, violence, clashes have erupted across Haryana, Punjab and Delhi after Dera Sacha Sauda chief Gurmeet Ram Rahim was convicted of rape. I have with me somebody who needs absolutely no introduction, Shekhar Gupta, Editor-in-Chief of ThePrint. So as we speak, people have died across these three states. Property has been vandalized over somebody who has now been convicted of rape. Can you explain this phenomenon really?
Well, first of all, less than 3 years. On two of those three occasions, this was caused by a Baba or a so-called spiritual leader causing trouble. So large parts of Haryana and Punjab are now ruled by these Babas with their own deras, which are a bit like stockaded fortresses. They have followers who are willing to die and kill for them. There is a lot of superstition. And no government has tried to counter this because all politicians in these states have been in cahoots with these Babas. Because all these Babas control large numbers of votes. So before every elections and after, you find all leaders, nobody's an angel. Congress, BJP, Akali, they all go down on their knees asking for votes. And now we are paying for that.
Well, in Haryana, we have really seen this trend. We saw it in case of Baba Rampal. Today, it's in case of Gurmeet Ram Rahim. You know the state better than anybody else. What explains this kind of cult following with such belligerent supporters who are willing to do anything really for them?
Well, quite frankly, I'm at a loss too, and I'm trying to think this through. I'm writing national interest today on this issue. It's very difficult for me to say why. Except to say that Sikhism is a very young religion. It is the youngest, the newest major religion in the world, in the history of mankind. Just a little over 500 years old. So there is a lot of evolutionary thought, and because it's also in many ways a doctrinaire faith with a book, people tend to, the book limits an individual's ambition of taking over religious leadership. So there are people who set up sects heavily drawing from the Guru Granth Sahib, but who also offer their devotees a system of prayer, worship, etc., which one is not as binding in many ways as traditional conservative Sikhism, but also which is more touchy-feely because they have a living God or a guru. So they can, a book cannot answer your questions. But if you go to a Baba, we have to be careful using the expression Guru in Punjab because it's sacrilege. But if they go to a Baba, Baba is a real person. So you go there, you say, I am sick, Babaji, I've got this problem, and Babaji then performs a miracle like those evangelists. Odds are somebody might get cured. If somebody does get cured, because nature cures many people, then that becomes folklore. And Babas spread their own folklore. And that's how they build all this. But having said that, this one, Ram Rahim, is sui generis because he's become a film star. He uses social media. The moment I started tweeting about what's happening in Panchkula, yesterday I found that his followers, his office in Sirsa started following me. Immediately it popped up on my timeline. So they are very smart with this.
Organized.
Yes, very organized. And it's a real cult. For example, he rides motorbikes, but every year motorbikes that he rides are auctioned, and his devotees come and pay crores for those motorbikes for the pleasure of riding a bike which Babaji had driven. So this is a completely different phenomenon. I think none of the others, the Nirankaris, the Radha Swamis, the Namdharis, or the followers of that Ashutosh Freezer Baba, the guy who died 3 years back, but his followers will not cremate his body. It's kept in the freezer, and they come every morning and they chant Ashu Baba Aayenge. He's a Bihari who he came to Punjab and got so many followers. He's called Freezer Baba now. In fact, a single judge bench of Punjab High Court had ordered that his body be cremated, but a division bench then overruled it. So somebody will explain this phenomenon better, maybe a sociologist, but there is a phenomenon that in a region which is a very well defined, very well run religion, which is its own sort of spiritual and temporal headquarters, which is Amritsar, around that so many others have arisen. And the fact is that in Punjab and Haryana, there is very little to choose between Sikhism and Hinduism. Most Hindus are quite happy to go to follow tenets of Sikhism and vice versa.
Right.
So it's much easier then for these Babas to find followers in both sects, and usually they'll put on a turban and pretend to be some kind of a. They are all careful now not to say Guru, because the head of the Nirankari sect was assassinated because word spread that he was calling himself Guru. The head of another sect, Baniara Baba, he was stabbed in a court in Ambala by Babar Khalsa because they said he's calling himself Guru. He wrote a book about his own miracles called Bhavsagar Granth, but that Granth expression there became almost a death sentence for him. So it's a very fraught situation, and what's also happened is that a lot of the people of poorer classes and castes, particularly scheduled castes and OBCs, who feel disempowered by Jats in their villages, particularly in Punjab, they've sought refuge in these deras.
Right. Well, nuggets of information that only Shekhar Gupta can give you. This is your opportunity to ask him questions directly. Do send in your questions. I will begin with one viewer question we already have. This is from Vikram Gupta at VKRM Gupta is his Twitter handle. Is the violence really in support of Ram Rahim Singh or just mob mentality at play? People would not want to leave without action once gathered.
Well, I don't agree with this, because these are not really poor people.
Right.
These are not people with no stakes in life. These are people with stakes in life.
Right.
In fact, many of Baba Ram Rahim's followers are very well educated, financially very well to do. They are reacting from emotion. These are not your sort of garden variety writers.
Right.
They don't answer to any definition of writer. These are people who are genuinely unhappy and angry, and who believe that their spiritual leader has been victimized.
So it's more organic, is what
it is.
Well, there's a question.
It is, if I may say so, carefully, but I'll still say so, it is communal violence.
Right. Well, that's your answer, Vikram. There's a question from Shraddha Upadhyay at Shraddha is the Twitter handle. She wants to know whether the situation is fit for president rule. To add to that, we've seen the Khattar government falter on several fronts when it comes to this maintaining law and order in the state. So just putting these two together, what would you say?
Well, I'm not a supporter of president's rule anywhere.
Right.
And while things are bad and you see a lot of incompetence, one day's crisis or 1 or 2 day or 3 day crisis over 3 years are no reason to impose president's rule. Because if you started doing that, then the entire country might have to be in president's rule.
Right.
Also, there is no guarantee that president's rule is always better than an elected government. We've seen that in Punjab,
right.
And we've seen in the past, and we've seen that in Kashmir.
Right.
So I don't think imposing president's rule is a solution. It's a rhetorical question, though, that you keep threatening everybody, but what about Article 356?
Right.
I don't think we've reached that level of breakdown of constitutional order. If tomorrow, if for example today, Haryana police, again rhetorical, had refused to implement the court's orders to arrest
right.
Baba Ram Rahim and lock him up in jail,
right.
then it would be a fit case. So, for Article 356, for President's rule, the bar has been set very high.
Right. Well, I'll take a question from Proud Indian at Rishi_Bhatt is the Twitter handle. Would Congress have done it differently? No one can deny that Baba has a huge number of votes. You've already talked about the kind of political clout they bring with them.
Well, again, it's a hypothetical question. It's very difficult to answer this. I would say that a more experienced chief minister
right.
would have handled this better, because these things have to be handled politically.
Right.
You have to anticipate what's going to happen.
Right.
And you have to then reach out to the right people and read out the Riot Act or make whatever deals you want to make and resolve this. There is a sense here of state government having gone into paralysis.
Right. Well, that's actually my next question. What happened today is not something that was not anticipated. An adverse verdict would have got some kind of violent reaction. How did the state government and the police falter so much?
Well, there is always, don't search for conspiracy for something that you can answer more simply in terms of incompetence.
Right.
Or stupidity, if
right.
you use a stronger word.
Right.
So I think it's more a case of that. But the fact is that because this government also came to power with the Dera chiefs transferring his votes en masse. In fact, many cabinet ministers later went to the Dera chief, to thank him for their support. Twitter is a very cruel medium, so we still have old tweets of not just the Chief Minister of Haryana,
right,
but also our Prime Minister,
right,
having praised
right,
Baba Ram Rahim for his support to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, etc. As recent as 2014, around the election time and after,
right,
in Haryana. So having done that, you do acquire a bad conscience. More experienced politicians have no conscience. Right, so maybe more cynical, experienced politicians would have handled it differently, but a more greenhorn politician has been caught at his wit's end.
Right.
And I don't mean this personally for one person, but this is a very, very inexperienced cabinet in Haryana, because BJP has never been in power directly in the state.
Right, right. Well, I really have a string of questions. I can't take all, but we'll take some of them. There is one from @dsate450. Don't you think Khattar government should be sacked? I think you've already answered that. So, would you like to add anything to what you said earlier?
Government should not be sacked for failures on law and order fronts for a day or two, because if you did that in Jammu and Kashmir, you will sack a government every day.
Right. At @r_k tweet, can we expect a few questions from Captain Amrinder as well, or to Captain Amrinder rather, because there's violence in Punjab as well?
Well, there is violence in Punjab, but this you have to say for him that he's been out in the field, he's been out. Violence is not originated from Punjab, it's originated from Haryana. Yes, Chandigarh is the capital of both states, and Panchkula is in the outskirts of Chandigarh. It's an extension of Chandigarh. But Punjab government has been more proactive, and frankly, Ram Rahim has more followers in Punjab than he does in Haryana. In Punjab, there is a history of the Akal Takht again having issued a hukamnama or an ecclesiastical bull, like a papal ecclesiastical bull against Gurmeet Ram Rahim, forbidding Sikhs from having social contact with his followers. What in the language of Sikh religious practice is called roti beti ka sambandh,
right,
that you will not break bread with them and you will not intermarry with them.
Right.
So that history is there. So the situation in Punjab can become more sensitive.
Right.
But given that background, I'd say so far so good.
Right. From @Ahmed Fazil, is it time for Rajnath Singh to go? Well, I think law and order is a state subject in any case, but what would you like to?
Well, I can only say to you what General Krishna Rao said when a bomb was planted almost under this dais where he was speaking while unfurling the national flag. I think it was Republic Day in Jammu.
Right.
And there were demands for his head. And he said that to me. He said, I'm willing to go. But every time a bomb goes off in Kashmir, if you remove a governor, how will you govern Kashmir? So, a state chief minister or a home minister of India is not like the coach of the Indian hockey team. We used to change one every 6 months after losing every tournament.
Right.
That you can't do. People have to stay there. It's a very large, complex country. They have to manage it.
Right. Well, let me take a few questions from our viewers who are watching us on Facebook. There is one from Rishabh Bengani. Why does the state not act with more spine in times like these? Even the courts have given them all the leeway they could have asked for.
It is shameful that the state has had to wait for the courts to tell them what they should do.
Right.
Law and order is the state's responsibility. Violence under our constitution is the monopoly of the state.
Right.
It's for the state to use violence or coercive methods where these are needed, and then be held accountable for its actions if need be in court. As a citizen, I can go to court saying government opened fire when they should not have opened fire.
Right.
But now for the government to wait for court to give them preemptive permission to do so is almost like applying for anticipatory bail before committing a crime. Governing a country is not committing a crime. If you have to open fire, you have to open fire.
Absolutely.
You have powers under the law.
Right. Well, I will take this is a slightly different question, so I'm taking this. This is from @Sovik Srimani on Twitter. Says all religious professionals must pay taxes, all their finances must be scrutinized, and they are becoming a big nuisance.
Well, I think since I'm not a follower of any sect, I fold my hands when I go past any place of worship.
Right.
So I will not use the expression nuisance, but I would say that the godman phenomenon, particularly when it crosses the limits of law, has to be countered firmly. In this case, for example, there is need now. The British gave us some bad systems, but they also gave us some good systems if used sparingly, and one of those was collective fines.
Right.
I think there is a case now for imposing a collective fine on this Dera. They have enough money, and also sending in authorities and inspectors inside the headquarters and checking out what's been going on, and also fast tracking all the other cases which have been pending in the legal system. There's another rape case. There's the case of the murder of the reporter who had broken this rape story, the local journalist. There's also an allegation charged by a large bunch of men claiming that they were emasculated by him on the promise of giving them mukti.
Right.
So
you think it's time for all cases to now be looked into?
Yes, but more importantly, all politicians from all parties in Punjab and in Haryana now have to say, if they can put their hands on their heart and say, we'll never go to a Baba to ask for mass votes. Because it's one thing to talk about vote bank politics, Hindu vote, Muslim vote, this vote, that vote.
Right.
But this is vote bank politics of the worst kind. In fact, Punjab and Haryana High Court, in one of the orders, while talking about this freezer Baba, has said that state government is not moving because everybody is indulging in vote bank politics.
Right. Well, I don't have time. I will take one last question. This is from at Wicked Soul. Do you think Khattar's complacency is with the tacit approval of Modi? I know you've said that no conspiracy theories should be attached to this.
Well, I don't believe that his complacencies, forget being with approval or in conspiracy with anybody, I don't think that complacency is deliberate. I think it's mostly a case of inexperience. Our politics is very complex. Governance is a function of handling great complexities. I think Haryana has a very inexperienced government.
Right. Well, that was Shekhar Gupta answering all your questions on what is happening after the Ram Rahim verdict, putting it in context and dissecting really the situation at this point. I'm sorry we couldn't take a lot of your questions, but I'm sure you'll find your answers when you read his column, The National Interest, which will soon be up on the Print website, which is theprint.in. Thank you for watching, and thank you so much for sending in your questions.